The sound of the palm hitting Kiara's cheek was louder than the roar of the Soul Fusion kitchen. It cracked through the air like a whip, silencing the K-pop track on the speakers, the clinking of expensive crystal, and the breath of every socialite in the Gangnam bistro. Kiara, a waitress who had moved across the world with nothing but suitcase and prayer, was staring into the cold, pale eyes of Vex Morra, a billionaire's son who treated people like furniture. Everyone in the restaurant held their breath, waiting for the security team to drag Kiara into the alley. They expected her to disappear. But what the man at the corner table did next didn't just stop the room. It shifted the tectonic plates of the Korean underworld. This is a story of how a single drop of spilled wine ignited a war for a throne. The bistro was the kind of place that smelled of Wagyu, expensive cologne, and old blood entitlement. For Kiara, it just smelled like the overdue rent on her cramped studio apartment and the exhaustion of a double shift. Her red dress, the uniform required for the VIP night, felt like a second skin she was desperate to shed, but she kept her back straight. She had to. In a city where she was often treated as an invisible outsider, her dignity was the only thing the debt collectors couldn't seize. Another bottle, and make sure this one isn't bottom shelf trash. A voice drawled from the center of the room. Kiara adjusted her heavy black tray and moved toward the VIP booth. Tonight, the table was a battlefield of egos. At the head sat Kang Joon. He was a man carved from golden shadows and iron, his dark gold hair slicked back and glowing under the chandelier like a crown. He wore a bespoke black suit and a blood-red tie that matched the handkerchief in his pocket. He wasn't laughing with the others. He wasn't even drinking. He sat perfectly still, his tattooed hands resting on the table, watching the room with eyes that looked like scorched earth. Beside him sat Vex Morra, looking bored and dangerous in a light blue silk shirt. "Right away, Mr. Morra," Kiara said, her voice a practiced mass of professional calm. She leaned in to set the new bottle down, but as she did, Vex's elbow accidentally flared out, catching the edge of her tray. The world slowed down. Glasses of vintage red wine tumbled, the liquid cascading like a bloodstain across Vex's pristine trousers. The gasp that tore through the bistro sucked the oxygen right out of the room. Kiara froze, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "You clumsy, incompetent brat," Vex hissed, standing up so fast his chair screeched against the marble. The wine dripped from his clothes onto the floor. "Do you have any idea what this costs? You could work here for 10 years, and you wouldn't be able to afford the thread in these seams." I am so sorry, sir," Kiara stammered, reaching for a linen napkin. "Let me help you." "Don't touch me." Vex barked, his hand flying out. The slap didn't just hurt. It was meant to humiliate. Kiara's glasses flew off her face, clattering onto her tray as she stumbled back. The room went deathly silent. Vex stepped closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "You think because you put on a red dress you're one of us? You're a servant. You're nothing. I could buy and sell your entire family before the sun comes up." At the head of the table, Kang Joon finally moved. He didn't shout. He didn't draw a weapon. He simply stood up, a silhouette of black, gold, and red, and the entire room felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Kiara stood in the middle of the expensive restaurant, her face burning from the slap. The silence was heavy. She could feel the eyes of every wealthy customer on her, but she didn't look up. She didn't look at Vex Morra, who was still huffing in anger. She didn't even look at the man with the golden hair, who had just stood up. Her mind was already miles away, back in her tiny, cold apartment in the outskirts of the city. Every morning, Kiara woke up before the sun. She would check the small plastic bottle on the bedside table to see how many heart pills her father had left. Today, there were only 3. 3 pills meant 3 days of breathing. After that, the medicine would run out, and the hospital would stop, sending the nurse to check on him. Her father, Arthur, had been a strong man once. He used to carry Kiara on his shoulders and tell her that moving to Seoul was their big chance for a better life. But now he was a shadow. He spent his days hooked to an oxygen tank that hissed like a dying radiator. The medical bills weren't just a number to Kiara. They were a mountain that grew taller every night. She had 3 different jobs. She cleaned offices at dawn, delivered packages at lunch, and wore this red dress at the bistro until midnight. Her feet were always swollen, and her back always ached. She lived on instant noodles and tap water, so that everyone she earned could go toward the mountain. As she stood there with the wine dripping onto the floor, Kiara felt a wave of pure exhaustion. This job was her only hope. The tips at a VVIP restaurant like this were usually enough to buy another week of oxygen. But now, staring at the shattered glass and Vex's ruined pants, she knew the manager would fire her before the hour was over. She would lose the apartment. She would lose the medicine. She would lose her father. She squeezed her eyes shut again, trying to hold back the tears. In her neighborhood, people knew her as the girl who never quit. She was the one who could smile through a double shift and offer a kind word to the elderly woman next door. But at this moment, she felt completely hollow. The international dream she had chased across the ocean felt like a cruel joke. She was just a girl in a red dress, thousands of miles from home, being humiliated by a man who had never worked a day in his life. She waited for security guards to grab her arms. She waited for the shouting to start again. But instead of a rough hand, she felt a strange change in the air. The room grew even quieter, if that was possible. The scent of expensive cologne was suddenly replaced by something deeper, the smell of rain on hot asphalt and high-end leather. Kiara finally opened her eyes and looked down. She saw a pair of polished black shoes stop just inches away from her own worn-out work flats. She looked up, past the sharp crease of black trousers and the flash of a blood-red tie. She found herself staring into the emotionless face of Kang Joon. Close up, his tattoos were intricate maps of a dangerous life, crawling up his neck and across the back of his hands. He didn't look at Vex. He looked only at Kiara, his narrowed eyes searching hers, as if he were reading a book she had kept locked for years. Kiara walked down the dark street after her shift ended. The night air was cold, and her face still felt tight from where Vex had hit her. She didn't have her glasses, and the world looked blurry around the edges. Her mind was racing. She had been sent home early, and she was sure your fired text would come any minute. Without this job, her father would be out of the hospital by Monday. She felt like she was drowning in the middle of the city. Suddenly, a massive black SUV with dark windows pulled up slowly beside her. Kiara froze. In this part of Seoul, a car like that usually meant trouble. She tried to walk faster, her heart thumping against her ribs, but the car kept pace with her. The back window rolled down with a soft hiss. "Get in, Kiara." The voice was deep and calm. She stopped and looked. Sitting in the shadows of the leather interior was Kang Joon. He had taken off his suit jacket, and his white shirt sleeves were rolled up, showing the dark tattoos that wrapped around his muscular arms like vines. He didn't look angry. He looked like he was waiting for a business partner. Kiara hesitated, but she looked at the empty street, and then at the powerful man in the car. She realized she had nothing left to lose. She climbed into the warm, quiet cabin. The door shut with a heavy thud, locking out the sound of wind. "I know about the hospital," Kang Joon said. He didn't look at her. He was looking at a tablet in his hand. "I know about the bills, the rent, and the medicine your father needs to stay alive." Kiara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "How do you know that? Who gave you the right to look into my life?" "I'm making my business to know who has the courage to stand still after being struck by a man like Vex Morra," he replied. He finally turned his head. His eyes were sharp, but there was a strange spark of respect in them. "Vex is a bully. He is also a part of a family that is trying to block my business. I want to ruin him, but I need a reason that the other families will accept." He leaned forward, and the light from a street lamp passed over his golden hair. "I want to hire you, not to serve drinks, but to stand by my side. For the next month, you will be my personal associate. You will wear the finest clothes, eat at the best tables, and act as if you belong there. I want you to make Vex lose his mind. I want him to attack you again, but this time in front of the people who matter. When he does, I will have the excuse I need to crush his family's company." Kiara stared at him. "You want to use me as bait." "I want to pay you to be brave," Kang Joon corrected. "In return, I will pay every single one of your father's medical bills. I will move him to a private suite with the best doctors in Korea. And when we are done, I will give you enough money to never work a double shift again." Kiara thought her father's gasping breath. She thought of the mountain of debt. She looked at Kang Joon steady, tattooed hand held out toward her. She took it. His grip was firm and warm. "Deal," she whispered. The elevator rose silently to the top floor of a gleaming glass tower in the heart of Gangnam. When the doors slid open, Kiara stepped out into a world that felt like a movie set. The penthouse was filled with white marble, golden lights, and windows that stretched from the floor to the ceiling, showing the glowing veins of the city below. It was a place for kings, not for girls who smelled like kitchen grease. "This is your home for now," Kang Joon said. He walked across the room, his black suit looking sharp against the bright walls. "Your father's already in the private wing of the Seoul Medical Center. He has his own room and 2 nurses who speak your language. He is safe." Kiara let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for years. The weight on her chest loosened just a little bit. She looked at her reflection in a large mirror. She still had on her old work flats and the red dress that was now stained with wine. She looked like a smudge of dirt on a clean diamond. "You cannot look like a waitress anymore," Kang Joon continued. He signaled to a group of women waiting in the hallway. They were holding racks of silk clothes and boxes of jewelry. "But more importantly, you cannot act like one. In my world, everyone is looking for a reason to bite. If you look down, they will step on you. If you apologize, they will take everything you have." For the next few hours, Kiara went through a transformation. The stylist scrubbed the city dust from her skin and treated her dark curls until they shone like silk. They dressed her in a tailored suit the color of midnight. When she looked in the mirror again, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her deep brown skin glowed, and her posture was taller. Kang Joon sat in a leather chair, watching her. "Now the rules," he said. He stood up and walked toward her. "Rule number 1, never speak first. Let them wonder what you are thinking. Silence is power. Rule number 2, never show fear. If a man like Vex Morra screams at you, look at him as if he is a fly on the wall. Rule number 3, you belong to me. That means you are untouchable. If anyone touches your skin without your permission, you don't cry. You tell me, and I will handle it." He stopped just inches from her. The smell of expensive leather and rain was stronger now. He reached out and adjusted the collar of her new jacket. His tattooed fingers were steady and calm. Kiara felt a spark of electricity, a mix of fear and something else she couldn't name. She wasn't just a girl hiding in the shadows anymore. She was being turned into a weapon. "Vex thinks he broke you," Kang Joon whispered, his eyes narrowing. "Tomorrow night, we will show him that he only woke you up. You are Kiara Miller now, my partner. Remember that." Kiara nodded. She looked out at the city lights. She knew she was walking into a den of lions, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she had claws of her own. She wasn't just surviving. She was changing. The rules were hard, but they were the only thing that would keep her and her father alive in the war that was coming. The night of the mayor's ball arrived, and the city of Seoul was covered in a light mist that made the neon lights look like floating jewels. Kiara stood before the full-length mirror in the penthouse, barely breathing. She was wearing a sleeveless gown of deep emerald silk that flowed down her body like water. It was the color of a forest at night, and it made her rich, dark skin look like glowing mahogany. Around her neck was a thin gold chain, simple but elegant. She didn't look like a girl who had spent years scrubbing floors. She looked like a queen waiting for her throne. Kang Joon walked into the room, his black suit perfectly pressed. He stopped when he saw her. For a split second, his serious, emotionless face changed. His eyes widened, and he adjusted his bright red tie, as if he were suddenly nervous. He walked over and offered his arm. His hand was covered in the dark ink of his tattoos, but his touch was gentle. "Tonight, you are not a waitress," he whispered. "You are the most important woman in the room. Remember the rules." They arrived at the Grand Hotel in a fleet of black cars. When the doors opened, the camera flashes were like a storm of white light. Kang Joon led her through the crowd, his hand resting firmly on the small of her back. Every head turned. People whispered behind their hands, wondering who the beautiful black woman was on the arm of the city's most dangerous man. Near the center of the ballroom, Kiara spotted Vex Morra. He was standing with a group of men, laughing loudly and holding a glass of champagne. He was wearing a light blue suit, looking just as arrogant as he did the night he slapped her. Beside him stood a woman in a bright red dress, looking bored. When Vex saw Kang Joon approaching, his smile vanished. Then he saw Kiara. His face turned a strange shade of gray, and his glass wobbled in his hand. "Kang Joon," Vex said, his voice shaky. "I didn't think you'd bring guests." He looked at Kiara with a sneer, trying to find the waitress he had insulted. "She looks different when she isn't covered in wine. Did you find her in a bargain bin?" Kiara felt a surge of heat in her chest, a memory of the sting on her cheek. But she remembered Kang Joon's voice. Silence is power. She didn't flinch. She didn't look down. Instead, she looked Vex right in the eyes and gave him a slow, pitying smile, the kind of smile a person gives to a barking dog. "It is a lovely party, Mr. Morra," Kiara said, her voice smooth and calm, "though I see you are still wearing blue. It's a very brave choice for someone who spills so much." The men around Vex chuckled. Vex's face turned bright red, his jaw tightening. He looked like he wanted to scream, but in this room full of mayors and bosses, he couldn't. He had been dismissed by a woman he thought was beneath him, and he had no way to fight back without looking like a fool. Kang Joon leaned in close to Kiara as they walked away. "Perfect," he murmured. He led her toward the dance floor, and as the music began, Kiara realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She had won the first round without even raising her voice. She was no longer the girl waiting for a tip. She was the storm that was about to break. "Do you want the book, Kang Joon?" she asked, her voice steady. He reached out and touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a stray tear. "I don't care about the book, Kiara. I have enough power. I want the people who hurt you to stay away. But to do that, we have to find it first." The morning after the ball, Kiara sat by the window of the penthouse. Her arm was sore, but her mind was even more painful. She kept thinking about the black book Kang Joon had described. If her father had it, why didn't he tell her? She looked at her phone, waiting for the daily update from the hospital. When the phone finally vibrated, it wasn't a text from the nurse. It was a video call from an unknown number. Kiara answered, and her heart stopped. The screen showed a dark, dusty room. Her father, Arthur, was tied to a wooden chair. He looked pale, and his oxygen tank was missing. Standing behind him was Vex Morra, holding a heavy metal pipe. Vex wasn't smiling anymore. His face was full of a dark, messy rage. "You have 2 hours, Kiara," Vex hissed into the camera. "The ledger. Bring it to the old shipyard at Pier 4. If I see a single one of Kang Joon's men, or if you tell your golden boss where we are, I will turn off your father's air for good. Come alone." The screen went black. Kiara let out a choked sob. She turned around to see Kang Joon standing in the doorway. He had seen the whole thing. His face was like stone, his jaw tight. He immediately pulled out his radio to call his guards. "No!" Kiara screamed, rushing toward him. He said alone, "If you follow me, he will kill him. You don't understand, he's all I have left." "Kiara!" "It is a trap," Kang Joon said, his voice deep and firm. He grabbed her shoulders, his tattooed fingers pressing into her skin. "Vex is desperate. He will kill you both the moment he has that book. I have snipers. I have cars. We will do this my way. We will go to your old apartment, find the book, and then my team will take the shipyard." "He has eyes everywhere," Kiara cried. She looked at Kang Joon, and for a second, she felt a flash of anger. He was talking about teams and snipers, but she was talking about her father's life. "I won't let you risk him just to win your war. I am protecting you." Kang Joon roared. "Then let me go." Kiara shouted back. Kang Joon stepped closer, blocking the door. He was a mountain of muscle and power, and he wasn't going to let her leave. Kiara reached into her pocket. She felt the small, cold canister of pepper spray she had carried since her days as a waitress. It was the only weapon she had, a tiny thing compared to Kang Joon's guns and knives. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Before he could react, Kiara pulled the spray and aimed it directly at his eyes. Kang Joon let out a low growl of pain, stumbling back as a stinging miss hit him. He covered his face, his body shaking with shock. Kiara didn't wait. She grabbed the keys to one of the SUVs from the table and bolted out the door. She ran to the elevator. her heart thumping against her ribs. She felt terrible for hurting the man who had protected her, but she couldn't lose her father. She burst into the garage, jumped into the massive black car, and slammed her foot on the gas. As she roared out into the Seoul traffic, she saw Kang Joon's guards running toward her in the rearview mirror. She was alone now, driving toward a nightmare with nothing but a hope and a secret she didn't even know she had. The shipyard at Pier 4 was a graveyard of rusty metal and shadows. The fog rolled off the Han River, thick and cold, smelling of salt and old oil. Kiara climbed out of the stolen SUV, her legs shaking so hard she could barely stand. In her hand, she clutched the small black ledger she had found taped behind a loose board in her old kitchen. It was heavy with secrets that had nearly cost her everything. "I'm here," Kiara screamed into the mist. "I have the book. Let him go." A pair of bright headlights cut through the fog. Vex Morra's silver car sat near the edge of the pier. Two men stepped out, pushing a wheelchair. Her father, Arthur, was slumped over, his eyes closed. He looked so small against the backdrop of the dark, churning water. Vex stepped out last, his light blue shirt wrinkled and his face twisted with a mean smile. "Bring it here, Waitress," Vex shouted. "Let him go first." Kiara yelled back, holding the book over the edge of the dock. "If you touch him, this goes into the river." Vex laughed, a sharp sound that made her skin crawl. "You aren't in a position to make deals. Give me the book, or the old man takes a swim." Kiara walked forward, her heart hammering. When she was 10 feet away, she held out the ledger. Vex snatched it, flipping through the pages with greedy fingers. A look of triumph crossed his face. He finally had the power he wanted. Kiara rushed toward her father, reaching for the handles of the wheelchair. "Thank you, Kiara," Vex said softly. He looked at his guards and gave a small, quick nod. "But I don't like witnesses." Before Kiara could grab the chair, one of the guards gave it a violent shove. Kiara screamed as the wheelchair rolled backward, tipping over the edge of the pier. There was a sickening splash as her father disappeared into the icy black abyss. "No!" Kiara shrieked. She didn't think about the cold. She didn't think about the depth. She dove into the water after him. The cold hit her like 1,000 knives, stealing the air from her lungs. The water was a wall of ink. She kicked downward, her eyes burning as she searched for the ghostly shimmer of the metal chair. She saw it sinking fast, dragging her father into the darkness. She grabbed his arm, pulling with all her might, but the chair was too heavy. Her lungs began to burn, and her vision started to fade into gray. Suddenly, the water above her exploded with light. A figure cut through the bubbles like a dark spear. It was Kang Joon. Even in the water, his golden hair seemed to glow. He didn't hesitate. He dove past Kiara, his strong arms reaching for the wheelchair. With a powerful kick, he surfaced, holding Arthur's head above the waves. Ropes splashed down around them as Kang Joon's men, who had arrived in a silent boat, began to pull them up. Kiara felt strong hands grabbing her jacket, hauling her onto the wet concrete of the pier. She collapsed, coughing up river water, her body shaking with cold. She looked up to see Kang Joon standing over her, dripping wet, his red tie gone but his eyes full of protective fire she had never seen before. Her father was beside her, gasping for air as the medics rushed in. They were alive, and the Golden Boss had kept his promise. He had come for her. The night at the pier ended with a loud sound of police sirens. Red and blue lights flashed against the wet pavement as the officers led Vex Morra away in handcuffs. He was no longer shouting. He looked small and defeated. Kang Joon stood with his arm around Kiara, watching the silver car be towed away. The ledger was gone, burned in a metal drum by Rocco, but it didn't matter. Kang Joon had already used his power to freeze Vex's bank accounts and expose his family's crimes. The war was over, and for the first time in her life, Kiara felt truly safe. 3 months later, the bistro looked completely different. The dark, cold feeling of the old restaurant was gone. Now, the room was filled with warm, golden light and the smell of fresh jasmine. The jazz band played a happy, upbeat song, and the staff moved with smiles on their faces. It was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of celebration. Kiara sat at a table near the window, wearing a new white silk dress that glowed like a pearl. Her father, Arthur, sat across from her. He looked strong and healthy, his skin clear and his eyes bright. He didn't need the oxygen tank anymore. He was laughing as he told Rocco a story about his days as a young driver in the city. Seeing him so happy made Kiara's heart feel like it might burst with joy. The kitchen doors opened, and Kang Joon walked out. He wasn't wearing his usual suit jacket. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up, and his bright red tie was perfectly straight. He carried a silver tray with 2 glasses of expensive juice. He walked over to Kiara's table with a playful smile. "Is the service to your liking, ma'am?" he asked softly. Kiara laughed, the sound bright and free. "It is much better than the last time I was here. I heard the last waitress was quite a troublemaker. She was the bravest person I ever met." Kang Joon replied. He set the tray down and took Kiara's hand. His tattooed fingers were warm and steady. The room grew quiet as he stepped back and slowly dropped to one knee. Kiara's breath hitched. She saw her father give a small, proud nod from the next table. Kang Joon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond so large and clear that it looked like a piece of the stars. "Kiara, you walked into my life and changed everything," Kang Joon said, his voice deep and full of emotion. "You showed me that being a boss isn't about making people afraid. It's about protecting the people you love. I don't want a partner for just a month. I want a partner for the rest of my life. I want you to be the queen of this city, standing right by my side." Tears of happiness spilled down Kiara's cheeks. She looked at the man who had saved her, the man who had seen her worth when she felt invisible. "Yes, Kang Joon," she whispered. "1,000 times, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and the entire restaurant erupted into applause. Outside, the first snow of the winter began to fall over Seoul, covering the old scars of the city in a blanket of pure white. Kiara wasn't a waitress waiting for a tip anymore. She was loved, she was powerful, and she was finally home.